So today we are going to spend a bit of time, guys, to look at a very important subject. As I've been saying to us that as leaders, we need to quickly focus on issues that matter. It is important for all students of apply what exactly these matters are and how these matters can be leveraged are following, and those of you that are tuning in, I've decided to stream this session also just specifically to allow others to have also this opportunity. I've deliberately decided to make sure that others also can participate in this class so they can leverage on the tools and the skills that we have at the African Institute. So we are looking at a very important subject or important module in this session. Okay, I hope you can be able to see my screen share on your side. I'm not going to. The screen share is not showing on the social media platform, so I've decided deliberately to bring this to you. Then those who are watching us via social media, those who have joined us maybe via Facebook or YouTube, if you wish to be part of the class, if you wish to register or enroll in the class, please, there are numbers that are scrolling on the screen. I would ask you to simply go on and register to be part of the class of 2026. As we know that when you are part of the class of 2026, the benefits that you have are more than just you following us via social media. Some people, they tell me, hey, I follow you. When I'm online, I don't, it's not always that I'm sharing leadership things. When I'm online, sometimes I'm just sharing what we call insights. Sometimes some of you, some people, they find me sharing things that are totally non-academic, or like politics and stuff like that, and we are discussing matters of national interest and things like that. So people end up making a mistake. But sometimes you find me sharing in church or things like that, and so people end up making a mistake of what we are doing. So in this class today, we are looking at leadership didactics. And if you are driving and you are following, please, you feel free to just put maybe your Bluetooth to your vehicle so that you can be able to hear this session. I'm going to be very brief because I'm just doing introduction. I'm not going to dive into all the details and the nitty-gritties. Let us look at leadership didactics in the African context, or in the African leadership and governance context. And this is, of course, applied leadership, which is a very strong module that we are looking at. Let me begin by saying that leadership didactics within African leadership and governance context refers to intentional designs and facilitation of learning process that develop leaders capable of responding to Africans' historical realities, governance challenges, institutional dynamics, and development aspiration. In Africa, leadership education cannot be valued natural or context blind. Applied leadership students are being prepared not only to lead organizations, but also to navigate fragile institutions, developmental states, hybrid governance system, and socio-political complexity. Leadership didactics, therefore, integrates leadership theory within African governance realities, ethical leadership traditions, and community-oriented values. This lecture situates leadership didactics within African political, economical, corporate governance, and public accountability and indigenous leadership philosophies. All right. So let's go to defining, therefore. Let us define leadership didactics. Let us define leadership didactics. All right. It can be defined as the deliberate and context-sensitive design of leadership learning that develops ethical, accountable, and adaptive leaders capable of advancing good governance, institutional effectiveness, and socio-economic transformation in Africa. Now, this is what it brings. Let's look at what it brings. Number one, leadership theory and development, didactics and adult learning principles, African governance systems and institutional realities, indigenous knowledge systems, and leadership values. Unlike generic leadership trainings, this one is focusing and emphasizing on the real issues of Africa, unlike the generic one, you know. So we look at historical consciousness. This is both post-colonial and pre-colonial legacies, governance and institutional strengthening, ethical leadership and anti-corruption, community-oriented and collective leadership. Right, so let's look at now, at this point in time, please, I hope you are taking your notes in this session. So let us look at why leadership didactics matters. Why leadership didactics? Why leadership didactics matters, okay? These are things that we need to focus on. Africa's leadership challenges are well documented and include, okay? These include, number one, weak institution and governance deficits, weak institutions and governance deficits, which is a very clear thing. Remember, in my dissertation on Africacy, I have said before Europe democratized, or before the West democratized, they first developed. Meaning, when I talk about development in this context, I do not talk about roads, I do not talk about buildings, I do not talk about the Twin Towers of the United States. I mean specifically developing institutions of governance. So we in Africa, we started with democracy without building institutions of governance. So as a result, we have weak institutions. Number two, corruption and abuse of power, in which we all know. Number three, leadership succession crisis. Well, I am going through reading, and I am being tempted to write a very strong book on what is happening in the nation of Zambia at the moment, just on this issue of leadership succession and crises, okay? If you look at the political movement that has been there called the Patriotic Front and what has happened after the death or the demise, even not just the demise, but let's begin with the demise of the then president Michael Sata. It shook a little bit, but they were still able to handle the pressure. Then the passing of then President Edgar Lungu, who later on took over, we can show leadership succession crises that have been rising. Out of that, one party, everybody feels he can do this, and it has been scattering and scattering and scattering. And this happens not just in the political sphere, but this happens also in all our leadership spheres. And corporate governance failures. This is very important for us to look at. Then number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then number 5, inequality, unemployment, underdevelopment. Look at this. Inequality, somebody said South Africa is one of the most in an equality society where you can find the rich and the poor. So in this perspective, applied leadership students or graduates in Africa have begun to understand and are increasingly expected to. What are the things that you are expected to solve out there? Because you stand together with people that have got MBAs, and you stand together with people with serious qualifications, they call them. But when you come out there with this qualification, you need to, number 1, lead both private and public institutions. You must be qualified to lead both private or public institutions. B, interferes with government, regulators, and communities. C, balance profitability with social impact and compliance. D, strengthen governance frameworks and accountability. So we must be able to strengthen that. We must be able to strengthen that. And I really request all the students of applied leadership to focus on this and to begin to see how best can I work on this. Leadership didactics ensures education precedes leaders who are not only technically competent, but institutionally grounded and ethically responsible. It is very important for us to acknowledge that. It's very important for us to acknowledge that. Number 4, theoretical foundations for African leadership didactics. Theoretical foundation for African leadership didactics. Let's go. On this perspective, number 1, we look at leadership theories reinterpreted for Africa. Leadership theories reinterpreted for Africa. Leadership didactics in Africa draws on global theories, but critically adapts them to African realities. Therefore, we look at number 1, transformational leadership. This one, transformational leadership, is relevant for national building, institutional reforms, and change management. But 2, or B, we look at ethical leadership, addressing corruption, transparency, and public trust. C, servant leadership, aligning with African communitarian values. D, adaptive leadership, responding to complex social, political, and economical challenges. The E, distributed leadership, strengthening institutions beyond individuals. Let's look at 4.2. African indigenous leadership philosophies. Leadership didactics in Africa must incorporate indigenous value system, including Ubuntu or Bato. Ubuntu, of course, many of us understand this concept Mostly are those of you in Southern Africa. But let's drop it down what Ubuntu entails. Ubuntu entails leadership as rational, humane, and community-centered. Number B, consensus building traditions, dialogue, inclusivity, and collective decision making. Eldership and stewardship. Leadership as custodianship rather than entitlement. All right. These philosophies counters excessive individualism and reinforce ethical responsibilities. 4.3. Let me look at the time. Okay, I've got just about 5 minutes before we go. 4.3, adult experimental and transformative learning in Africa. The students bring valid experience of governance systems, markets, and institutions. Effective leadership didactics, therefore, emphasizes problem-centered learning rooted in African case studies, reflections on power, authority, and legitimacy. Transformative learning that challenges normalized poor leadership practices. Leadership education becomes a space for resocializing leaders towards accountability and service. Let's look at number 5, core components of leadership didactics. Number 1, in this case, we look at leadership learning outcomes. Leadership didactics in Africa targets the development of ethical judgment and integrity, governance literacy, both for corporate and public, strategic leadership in a resource-constrained environment, political and institutional intelligence, social responsibilities, and stakeholder engagement. 5.2, teaching and learning approaches. Effective didactics methods includes African case studies. This has to look at state-owned enterprises, municipalities, banks, and NGOs. Governance simulations. This has to look at boardrooms, cabinet decisions, regulatory hearings. Then action learning projects in communities or public institutions. Then leadership reflections, journals on power and accountability. Lastly, mentorship by African leaders and practitioners. These approaches bridge theory with African leadership realities. 5.3. Assessment of leadership learning. Assessment emphasizes application and ethical reasoning through policy and governance analysis. Policy and governance analysis papers, right? Reflective essays on leadership identity. Group projects addressing real governance challenges and peer stakeholder feedback. Now, I will pause there because of time. When we meet again in class, I will take it down from where we have ended at point 5, but let me just quickly look at what we're going to look at in the next class. In the next class, we will focus on leadership didactics, ethics, and good governance. Then we will look at contextual leadership across Southern Africa, across Africa's African sector. Then we will look at the role of the leadership educator in Africa. Then we will also look at challenges in African leadership didactics. Then we will conclude our module. By this time, as we conclude our module, you will be challenged to be able to stand out there and focus on the realities of our governance systems within the continent and within the pretext of our study, then you will be able to be a solution, not just in your home, but also in your country. So guys, this morning, as we had our morning class, thank you very much for those that joined in earlier, and those that failed to join in because of network, and those of you who are traveling, have a wonderful day today. We are still closing the month of January 2026, and those of you that have not yet finalized making all your logistical issues to be in class, please, there are numbers that you can call there. Quickly give us a call so that we can be ready to roll smoothly, and looking forward to have you in class next time. Have a wonderful day, guys. Work well. We'll see you again for the next session. Bye.